workshop is recorded with audio only. So if you see that, that's what it is, just audio. And it'll be available on our website, thru.org, he said on Wednesday. And today's workshop is AA sponsorship. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our workshop on AA sponsorship. Let's start with a moment of silence to reflect on why we are here, followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. We are happy to have you here making this investment in your sobriety. You are making a huge deposit into your IRA, your individual recovery account, by being here and participating. Keep making those deposits no matter how small, because one day you may have a situation that will require you to make a huge withdrawal, and you don't want your IRA to be depleted. You could be watching ESPN and waiting for the games to begin, out shopping, or binge watching on Netflix. Instead, you are here with us making a huge deposit into your IRA. We will be using both AA conference approved literature and non-AA conference approved literature. Just because something is not AA conference approved does not mean it is disapproved by the AA conference. The Bible is not conference approved. The chips and medallions are not conference approved. The newspaper is not conference approved. Do yourself a favor and don't put restrictions on your sobriety. Oftentimes, the ties that bind us are more mental than physical. Here's an example. In India, one method of training elephants is to tie a baby elephant to a tree with a thick, heavy chain, thereby severely restricting its movement and almost immobilizing it. After a long time of this treatment, all an elephant handler has to do is tie a rope around the elephant and put a stake in the ground to keep the elephant in place. The elephant is so conditioned to think that it is unable to move that some of them have been found dead in place after a fire. All the elephant had to do was try to move and it would escape the fire, but it thought it was still trained to a tree. By taking the 12 steps, you will be freeing yourself from what's keeping you from being happily and usefully whole. 12 and 12, page 15. AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which is practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink, and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. You will also be breaking the ties that bind you and keep you from staying sober and growing. It is very easy to stop drinking. Everyone in here and in AA has stopped drinking at some point before coming into AA. Even if it's for 1 hour or 1 day, everyone has stopped drinking. The problem is staying stopped. That's where AA comes in. Alcoholics Anonymous is about helping us stay stopped for the rest of our lives, 1 day at a time. So how do we stay stopped? The answer is in the 12 steps of AA. There may still come a time when you will have the obsession to drink, but if you have invested enough into your IRA, your higher power will help you deal with that obsession and not drink, no matter what. The reason we have these workshops is to work on the underlying issues behind alcoholism. If alcohol was the problem, most of us would be cured by now. Today, we are going to discuss sponsorship. What is sponsorship? How do you find a sponsor? What to look for in a sponsor? What to expect from a sponsor? And what is the role of a sponsee? We will be using both AA conference approved literature and non-AA conference approved literature. And just because something is not AA conference approved does not mean it is disapproved by the AA conference. The Bible is not conference approved. Again, these are not conference approved material, but you don't want to put restrictions on your sobriety. On Big Book, page 89, practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Big Book, page 89. Bill W. writes, though 300,000 have recovered in the last 25 years, Maybe 500,000 more have walked into our midst and then out again. We can't well content ourselves with the view that all these recovery failures were entirely fault of the newcomers themselves. Perhaps a great many didn't receive the kind and amount of sponsorship they so sorely needed. We didn't communicate when we might have done so. So we AAs failed them. And that is AA Grapevine, The Dilemma of No Faith, 1961, volume 17, number 17. The purpose of this mini workshop is not to tell you how to be the perfect sponsor or sponsee, because there is no such thing. There are probably as many ways to sponsor someone as there are people in AA. Nobody knows the secret formula that will work for everyone. Please hold your questions till the end so we can finish this before the next meeting. We are all learning and growing in AA just as much as a newcomer. This is a program of hope, and hopefully that's what is transmitted in the sponsor-sponsee relationship. Most have had great sponsor-sponsee relationships. We are not here to bash previous sponsors if it didn't work out. We have a phone list which may help you find a sponsor or sponsee if you want one. And that'll be put in the chat. And you can send an email to the zoophonelist@gmail.com with your name, number, and your location, and they will get that to you. Why sponsorship works. On Big Book page 18 and 19, but the ex-problem drinker who has found the solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. Big Book page 18 and 19. That the man who is making the approach has had the same difficulty, that he obviously knows what he is talking about, that his whole deportment shouts at the new prospect that he is a man with a real answer, that he has no attitude of the holier than thou, nothing whatever except the sincere desire to be helpful, that there are no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we have found most effective. After such an approach, many take up their beds and walk again. Sponsorship works because of the ability of one alcoholic to identify with another. Sponsors are not doctors, therapists, clergymen, or family counselors. When people ask for such advice, guide them to the professionals who are competent to give it to them. The only thing you have to offer is your experience, strength, and hope in the program. Why should you sponsor others? I sought my God, and my God I couldn't find. I sought my soul, and my soul eluded me. I sought to serve my brother in his need, and I found all three, my God, my soul, and thee, from William Blake. AA cannot survive if individual members do not carry the message of recovery in and out of AA. AA groups cannot survive if they do not carry the message of recovery to individuals. Are you involved in your sobriety, or are you committed? In a bacon and egg breakfast, the chicken is involved, but the pig is committed. The individual cannot remain spiritually fit if they do not carry the message of recovery to others in and out of AA. The Dead Sea is named as such because it does not sustain normal life forms because it is too salty. The River Jordan flows into it, but the water does not go anywhere else after that. I submit that if we get all this good AA stuff and hold on to it without sharing it with anyone else, we will eventually become spiritually dead. There is usually a natural filtration process that takes place when a liquid flows into something and then flows out into something else. In the 12 and 12, page 110, practically every AA member declares that no satisfaction has been deeper and no joy greater than in a 12th step job well done. To watch the eyes of men and women open with wonder as they move from darkness into light, to see their lives quickly fill with new purpose and meaning, to see whole families reassembled, to see the alcoholic outcast received back into his community and full citizenship, and above all, to watch these people awaken to the presence of a loving God in their lives. These things are the substance of what we receive as we carry AA's message to the next alcoholic. What if you don't like using the word sponsor? If you have a problem with the word sponsor, you are not alone, and you don't have to call that person your sponsor. There's absolutely nothing wrong with calling the person helping you in or out of AA your mentor or your guide. If you visit a foreign country, you will want to have a guide along to help you navigate the terrain since you have never been there before and will want to have the best experience. If you decide to live in that new country, you can have that guide assist you for as long as you wish, at least until you become more familiar with the terrain and can navigate it yourself. If you form a friendship with that guide, you may want to consult with them from time to time about new terrain and new adventures. After a while, you will be able to take visiting friends around and show them the sights. You will find that by showing them around, you become more familiar with the new land. Each time you take visiting friends around town, you also learn something new or see things in a different light. The longer you are in that new country, new things are revealed to you constantly. How do you get a sponsor in AA? Excuse me. Many newcomers are fearful of asking someone to be their sponsor. Get out of your comfort zone and do it anyway. Let the group know that you're looking for a sponsor. You want to find someone who seems to be happy, joyous, and free. Someone who seems to have had a psychic change and no longer needs to drink or use any other substances. You should narrow your list down to perhaps 2 or 3 people to interview without them knowing that you're interviewing them. Get their phone numbers and talk to them. If you met in person, then watch how they talk to other people. Ask them out for coffee and see how they treat the server. Listen to how they talk about other sponsees or other members of the group. The way they talk about others is probably the way they will talk about you. Does the potential sponsor have a consistent message of sobriety? Do they have what you want emotionally and spiritually? If so, then ask them to be your sponsor. Don't be hurt if they say that they can't take on more sponsees. Move on to the next person on your list. How do you get a sponsee in AA? Back in the day, newcomers used to be assigned a sponsor, or someone would tell them that they were going to be their sponsor. Let the group know that you're available to be a sponsor. If someone says they're looking for a sponsor, run over there and tell them you'll sponsor them. Get out of your comfort zone if necessary. If you see that the sponsee is not yet ready to follow your suggestions, then ask them to find another sponsor and move on to the next prospect. How do you break up with a sponsor in AA? If the sponsor isn't working out, you can talk to them and say, "Thank you for everything you've done for me to this point. I really appreciate it, but I'd like to get another sponsor." It's that simple. If you get a new sponsor before leaving the previous one, you should let them know immediately that they are no longer your sponsor. You don't have to answer a bunch of questions, nor should they ask you a bunch of questions about why you want a new sponsor. Why should you help someone else in AA? On Big Book, page 89, life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. I hear, I forget, I see, I remember. I do, I understand. And that's from Confucius. All right, the main reason you should help someone else in AA is for a purely selfish reason. You help someone else because you will benefit the most. If you've ever taught someone how to drive, you soon realize that it also helps you remember the basics so that you will teach that person the right way and not your way. If you've ever taught a newbie at work, you soon realize that it helps you remember the basics of the job so that once again, you will teach that person the right way and not your way. When you take someone through the 12 steps, you will soon realize that it helps you remember the basics so that you will teach that person the best you can. The main role of a sponsor is to teach the newcomer how to work a 12-step program and show them how to teach other newcomers to do the same. Dr. Silkworth writes, in the course of Bill W., his third treatment, he acquired certain areas concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. This has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered, and that is the doctor's opinion in the big book. A brief history of sponsorship. The first pamphlet ever written concerning sponsorship was written by Clarence H.S. in early 1944. Its original title was to be AA Sponsorship, Its Obligations and Its Responsibilities. It was printed by the Cleveland Central Committee under the title AA Sponsorship, Its Opportunities and Its Responsibilities. The idea of sponsorship was born in Alcoholics Anonymous, the original 12-step fellowship. Living Sober, an AA publication, describes how the term sponsor came about. In the earliest days of AA, the term sponsor was not in the AA jargon. Then a few hospitals in Akron, Ohio, and New York began to accept alcoholics under the diagnosis as patients if a sober AA member would agree to sponsor the sick man or woman. The sponsor took the patient to the hospital, visited him or her regularly, it's a tough word to say, and was present when the patient was discharged and took the patient home and then to an AA meeting. At the meeting, the sponsor introduced the newcomer to other happily non-drinking alcoholics. All through the early months of recovery, the sponsor stood by, ready to answer questions or to listen whenever needed. Sponsorship turned out to be such a good way to help people get established in AA, and that it has become a custom followed throughout the AA world, even when hospitalization is not necessary. Sponsorship has since become one of the foundations of the recovery programs of all 12-step fellowships and one of the greatest blessings of membership. 12-step sponsorship pamphlet by Hamilton B. The word sponsor came around in AA after the Big Book was published in 1939. The word prospect is mentioned in the first 164 pages of the Big Book, along with the word friend, but nothing about a sponsor. You'll see the word sponsor in some of the stories in the second and subsequent editions of the Big Book, as well as in the 12 and 12, because those came after 1939. Big Book, page 96. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you offer. A person needed a sponsor in the early days of AA to find out where the AA meetings were being held. A new prospect had to meet with a committee and take the steps before even attending an AA meeting. A sponsor had to be responsible for a patient's bill if he was unable to pay. I would say that a sponsor is no longer needed in AA, but the principle of sponsorship is the lifeblood of AA and will forever be needed. Each day somewhere in the world, recovery begins when one alcoholic talks with another alcoholic, sharing experience, strength, and hope. Big Book forward to the third edition, page XXII. Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob meet for the first time. Bill and Dr. Bob met for the first time on May 12, 1935, which was Mother's Day. And Dr. Bob had been in the Oxford group for 2 years, but could not stay sober. Dr. Bob planned on giving that Vermont Yankee 15 minutes on that afternoon, but they ended up talking for over 5 hours. Dr. Bob felt for the first time that someone understood his drinking. Dr. Bob stayed sober for a few weeks, but then decided he was well enough to attend a medical conference. He wanted to show off his new self to the other doctors who had seen the drunk Dr. Bob. He did not stay sober that weekend and came back drunk. He had to be carried off the train. Dr. Bob got sober a few days later, June 10th, 1935, and remained sober until his death in 1950. Later, after Dr. Bob had recovered from his last binge and made his amends, Bill and Dr. Bob agreed that they needed to help another alcoholic. A nurse at Akron Hospital introduced them to Bill D., a prominent Akron lawyer when sober, but also a raging drunk who had been hospitalized numerous times. Dr. Bob paid for a private room in Akron Hospital so that he and Bill could share the human power of their stories of stopping drinking with Bill D. As related in the book, Not God, on page 39, Bill D. excitedly told his wife after several visits, "If Bill and Bob can do it, I can do it. Maybe we can all do together what we could not do separately." How does sober support differ from sponsorship? You want a group of sober friends in AA that you can talk to on a regular basis. You might even talk to them more than your sponsor, but it's more of a fellowship. Your sponsor is someone who will know everything about you and will be more of a guide. Can you or should you have more than one sponsor? In your first year and probably up to your third or fifth year, you should have only one sponsor. Having more than one sponsor in that time frame will allow you to seek the answers you want and play one off the other. After a period of time, it's okay to have a spiritual sponsor, financial sponsor, or a service sponsor, or a business sponsor. Those are just friends and mentors whose judgment you trust and want guidance from in specific areas. You might be fortunate enough to find one sponsor that will satisfy all those needs. How does a 12-step call differ from sponsorship? A 12-step call, visiting an alcoholic who had asked for help and talking about the AA program with him or her, may become the beginning of a sponsorship. But by itself, it's not necessarily sponsorship. Sponsorship, with its continuing interest in another alcoholic, often develops when the prospect is willing to be helped, admits having a drinking problem, and decides to seek sobriety as a solution. Sponsorship is 12-step work, but it is also continuing responsibility for helping a newcomer adjust to a way of life without alcohol. And that's on page 8 in the AA pamphlet on sponsorship. A 12-step call is always a success if you walk away still sober. Bill worked with hundreds of men from when he got sober in December 1934 till he met Dr. Bob in May of 1935, and not a single one stayed sober. But Lois, his wife, reminded him that he stayed sober. All you can do is plant a seed most of the time. It is suggested that you do not go on a 12-step call alone. Originally, members of AA would go with 5 or 6 guys on a 12-step call for identification reasons and not for safety reasons. So here's a couple of questions to ask yourself if you're a sponsee. Are you a good sponsee? Are you open-minded and ready to follow directions and get sober? Are you ready to do the work required to get and stay sober? Do you keep in regular contact with your sponsor? Do you know when to talk and when to listen? Are you truthful with your sponsor? And here are some questions to ask yourself if you are a sponsor. Are you a good sponsor? Have you taken the 12 steps and had a psychic change which allows you to be happy, joyous, and free? Are you patient and understanding? Are you armed with the facts about the AA program, yourself, the 12 steps, and the principles of the AA way of life? Do you know when to talk and when to listen? Do you have time to sponsor someone or take on more sponsees? Do you have a good moral compass and use the principles of the 12 steps to guide you? Here's a couple of red flag questions you can ask yourself regarding a sponsor. Does the sponsor talk about their problems to you every time you talk to them? Do they ask you for money or favors? Do they gossip about other group members and or other sponsees? Are they too rigid and inflexible? Does the sponsor bring unnecessary drama to the sponsor-sponsee relationship? And if you're a sponsor, here's a couple of red flags with a sponsee. They don't keep appointments to do step work. They don't talk to you regularly. You get the feeling they're not being honest. and you're the last to hear about what's going on with them? And does the sponsee bring unnecessary drama to the sponsor-sponsee relationship? So here's a little Q&A on some sponsorship. What exactly is sponsorship? All it is one alcoholic helping another. How soon can I become a sponsor in AA? You can wait till the 12 steps become a way of life, or you can start sponsoring someone after you've done your 5th step if they're just starting in AA. Do you even need a sponsor in AA? You don't need one, but it's best to have a guide, mentor, or a friend who can help you in early sobriety. Is sponsorship still needed in AA? Sponsorship is the lifeblood of Alcoholics Anonymous. How did sponsorship get started in AA? Bill realized that he could not stay sober by himself. He needed to work with other drunks. What's the best way to sponsor someone? That's not set in stone. Nobody knows what will work best for each sponsee. How long should you sponsor someone? That's also not set in stone. That's up to you. What is the job of a sponsor? The job is to help a sponsee through the 12 steps, perhaps become a friend in the process. Do you have to keep the same sponsor forever? No, you do not. But check your motive for wanting another sponsor. Just because they're not telling you what you want to hear doesn't mean you can just go out and find someone that will. Am I obliged to lend money or provide a place for a sponsee to stay? Absolutely not. Not obligated to do so, but if you want to, you can. Can a man sponsor a woman? And can a woman sponsor a man? Yes, but it's a good suggestion that men stick with men and women stick with women. What do you do if the sponsor-sponsee relationship isn't working out? Definitely get another sponsor. And if you are a sponsor, you can tell your sponsee to seek out another one. Should you go to the same meetings, have the same home group? Not necessary, but it doesn't hurt. And should a sponsor-sponsee be friends? It's probably a good idea because you build that trust relationship. What's the difference between a sponsor and a support group? A support group is a list of people you can talk to if your sponsor isn't available. I know for me, I had a lot of times where I would call my sponsor and she wasn't available, but I had my list that I can call and talk to other people, and that was my group. When does the sponsor-sponsee relationship become a dependent/codependent relationship? A sponsor should try to have the sponsee become independent of him or her. Sometimes the sponsor dumps on the sponsee more than the sponsee unloads their burdens. How fast should you proceed with the 12 steps? Definitely have a sense of urgency because this is a matter of life and death. And the earlier you can unload and get all of that nastiness out, the better. Should a sponsor also try to help a sponsee's family members? It doesn't hurt to talk to family members if necessary, but it's definitely suggested that they attend Al-Anon meetings, and that's to help them understand the alcoholic. How does a group benefit through sponsorship? The group will have more sober members. And should a sponsor and sponsee share the same views on everything? Definitely not, but should not try to sway the other to join their point of view. And do you have to go through all 12 steps again if you get a new sponsor? No, if your new sponsor insists that you go through the steps again with them, you can do it or ask someone else to be your sponsor. And there's also a AA pamphlet on sponsorship, which I think is going to be in the chat. And you don't fail till you've stopped trying. So get out of your comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone until it becomes comfortable. Don't be afraid of faking it until you make it. I like that, but I like faithing it until I make it. And you can visit our website for this and other workshops on our podcast at www.thzooCrew.org. This podcast will be available on the website in 2 to 3 days. So I think, let me ask John, are we going to open it up for any questions before I end with the Lord's Prayer, or how do you want to do that? John?
Open it up for a Q&A. If we could get a timer, keep your questions very brief, and then you have 90 seconds to just share your experience, strength, and hope on the question. You can come back, if when we get different questions, you can come back as much as possible.
Okay.
But just 90 seconds to directly respond to the question.
Got it.
So who's going to be our timer?
I can time also.
Okay.
All right.
All
So
right, let's get some hands up.
Yeah, that opens the floor. If you have any questions about sponsorship or being a sponsee, please raise your hand and we'll get them answered. We've got Dave F. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi guys, Dave, alcoholic. So about a week ago, my sponsor told me that it was almost time for me to put my name on the list and start accepting sponsors. And almost instantly after that happened, somebody approached me and I accepted it. But now I feel like I jumped into it a little too quickly, and I'm afraid that I'm going to begin steering this gentleman in the wrong direction. Of course, not on purpose, but I just like to know how the experienced sponsors know that they're staying on track.
Okay, thank you for your question. I think for me, when I started sponsoring people and I was unsure, I would go back to my sponsor and ask for advice on what to do in a certain situation. All right. I don't know if that was helpful. Steph, you want to come on in? I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi, everyone. Steph. My name's Steph. I'm an alcoholic. I'm just wondering, is there any consensus on whether you should or shouldn't, whether you need a local sponsor or whether it could be someone overseas, for example? Is there any reason why you shouldn't be doing it remotely? Or is it going to be down to everyone's individual sort of opinion and feelings about it?
Great question. For that one, I know there's a lot of people who got sober and have sponsors on Zoom, but it's basically your preference. If you want someone local, you can go to a local meeting, but if you want to find somebody through Zoom, I think that's also a great option, just as long as you get a sponsor and you meet with them and work the steps. All right, next we have John.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, John, alcoholic. So with first, with Dave's question, if you wait till you're ready to become a sponsor, you'll never become one. Absolutely, you're gonna have questions. Your first few times sponsoring, you'll probably have more questions than the sponsee. But definitely have somebody that you can go to, who can guide you, who can help you. When sponsee asks a question that you may not know. Because sponsoring will help you more than it will help the sponsee. So that's something you want to do. And with the second question, so even before Zoom started in worldwide, Zoom started in 2020, but even before Zoom, people were having long distance sponsor-sponsee relationships, just over the phone. But now with the Zoom platform, you can be in the same living room virtually, the same place virtually. So just do it. Just do it. Don't overthink it. And don't listen to these people who say the only way to do it is this way, the only way to do it is that way, because that's bullshit. There's no only way to do anything. Just get the sponsor. That's it.
Thank you, John. All right. Cuz, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Come on in.
Hello, good morning. Yes, good morning, family. I'm Jonathan, and I'm an alcoholic. And yeah, I'd like to address the first question that Dave asked. And for me, it's perfectly normal to be nervous about reaching out to help somebody else. So you're not unique. And yeah, it was important. I asked my sponsor. I said, "Do you think that I could start sponsoring?" And he said, "Absolutely." I knew that I needed that. It was something that I had never done. And yeah, it helps me immensely. And when I don't know something, um, I go to my sponsor and I ask them, or I ask other people with more experience, and that teaches me. A lot of times, the sponsor will ask me questions that I don't even know the answer to, so I get the answer, and he gets the answer. It comes out to be a 2-for-1. And yeah, it's perfectly normal to be apprehensive about it, but like we say around here, just do it. You know. And the second question is that with the sponsor and in person or virtual, yeah, either one counts. But when we do our phone list, we do try to find somebody that's relatively close to you. You got to look at the area codes. When you call, and you might get lucky and find somebody 30 minutes, an hour from you that you can meet up in person every once in a while. And yeah, so it's just yeah, that's what I know about that. So yeah, perfectly normal to be nervous, and yeah, find somebody with the same area code than you, or same zip code, and take it from there. And still, it's online, but you know that they're 30 minutes, 40 minutes away if you can find them. Thank you.
Thank you, cousin. All right, next we have Miss Nicole.
I'm Nicole, I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, I just wanted to I'll touch really quickly on Dave's question and the other question. I think it's totally natural to feel that way when you first, step into that. For me, it was, I don't know, I was very nervous and scared, but at the same thing, I look at it with anything in life that that you're contemplating or you're considering and doing. If you spend all of your time thinking about it and not doing anything, you're not doing anything. So, and I do believe in, with this journey, we're trying to give back what was so freely given to us. And I look at my experience with my past sponsors, and now I take that knowledge, what they have given me, and that's what I'm passing on to my sponsee. And I can feel for me how much it's benefited me and helped me. So it's in my hopes that I can do that for somebody else. And at the same time too, I look for them to say, like cousin Jonathan said, I'll call up my sponsor. If I don't know the answer, I'll call up my sponsor, I'll call up my mentor and be like, hey, how do I answer this? But, they're there for us to, to guide us. And like what was said from John too, it's helping us more than anything than it is in that journey than it is the sponsee. So, and as far as online, I've had sponsors that are in person. When I first came into this program, it was in person, and I've had online, and now it's online, and my sponsor is a million miles away. But for me, the experience itself is a connection that you have with that person, and you can make it work either way. Either way, it's the connection. My connection with her is I can feel that connection. And so for me, that's the most important part of it. Not distance, but that connection. And you can do anything over Zoom nowadays. And when I work with someone, it's imperative that I see them face to face and be able to have that as well. So it's the effort that you put into it. Anyways, that's all I had to add. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. All right, Karen, I'm gonna ask you to unmute here.
Good morning, Zoo Crew family. Karen, alcoholic, celebrating almost 8 months of sobriety. So I heard someone say, okay, yes, I made it. I heard someone say that his sponsor, is saying, I had that same conversation very recently with my sponsor. So a couple of the questions I'm supposed to use based on my notes here to screen myself to see if I will be a competent or appropriate sponsor at this stage is to ask myself, have I taken the 12 steps? The answer is no. I'm just barely have a meeting to finish my 7th step with my sponsor. And then the next question, am I happy, joyous, and free? I'm on the journey to happy, joyous, and free. I hope to get there, but I'm not. So I don't want to overthink it or anything, but I do question myself and my competence, and I do have a bit of anxiety and fear about not being enough. And I think that is maybe part of my disease and negative self-talk. But what I'm hearing a little bit here from the panelists who are helping to put this on is that, I need to step outside the comfort zone. But at the same time, if I have not actually done the 12 steps, and maybe that's not a good idea. So I would love some feedback. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you so much, Karen. For me, whenever I started sponsoring, after I did step 5, my sponsor told me that, hey, now it's time for you to help another alcoholic. So it all depends on if you're comfortable, uncomfortable. But if you're just afraid because you're afraid to, you're going to screw somebody up, that's not going to be possible, because they will, trust me, they'll know, so don't be afraid of that. And it really is the most rewarding thing whenever you see that light bulb go off when you help other people. And it's just like, wow, I was able to be a part of that. And to me, that was just so rewarding once I got past that fear. All right, Nicole.
Yeah, Nicole, alcoholic. I just think that I don't think it's necessary that you have worked all 12 steps. I think you just need to be a step ahead of who you're working with. And as long as you've completed that step, you're good to go. You're sharing your experience, strength, and hope with that person. And as long as you're ahead of them, you're doing okay. That's all I had to say.
All right, cousin Jonathan, come on in. Oops. Sorry, I unmuted you.
I'm Jonathan, and I'm an alcoholic, and I totally understand what the question was. Have I done all 12 steps? I was introduced to a totally new concept when I came here. I used to hear in meetings, I used to go to meetings, and they used to say, look for a sponsor who has 3 years or more, right? Look for a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor. Look for a sponsor who has done the 12 steps, and that was some stuff that I used to hear. I came here and you guys told me, first off, join a home group, right? Get a sponsor, right? Get honest with that sponsor and let him give me an introduction and an understanding of these steps. And that's what I believe. That's what I got. Nobody took me through the steps. I had to start living them. What you guys did was sit down and give me a new introduction and understanding of the steps where I started to understand, right? And so then when the first time that I sponsored somebody, I had not done my 9th step. That was the only step that I hadn't done. I hadn't had my 9th step experience. I hadn't started making my amends yet, but I did soon after. But up until step 8, I was able to tell them my experience. I was able to tell them honestly my first step experience, my second step experience, my third step experience, how I did a 4th step and a 5th step, and that I became ready and willing to change. That was 6 and 7. And I had made a list. So all of those things I had done, so I was able to share honestly how I did it. And 10, 11, and 12, I did come in the door doing that. I was praying when I was out there drinking. Now that I got sobered up, I was able to think better. That was step 10. put a filter on my mind and my ways. And step 11, I was willing and ready to help another alcoholic. So we give them what we have to offer at that time. And, you know, if we look at the history of AA, if everybody waited till they had a year to start sponsoring somebody or went through all 12 of the steps, I don't think that I would be here today sober, you know? So yeah, we use what we have to get to where we need to go, one step at a time, one day at a time, you know? And that's the concept that you guys gave me. And like we say in our reading, you can, you know, be a hope dealer. You know, you got one day, you can look back and grab the guy's hand with 0 days and tell him how you got one day. And on and on and on and on and on. And that's how this thing has been working for me. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, cousin. All right, anybody have any more questions about being a sponsee, looking for sponsors? Everyone has a sponsor. All right, Steph, I'm gonna ask you to unmute.
Hi, I'm Steph. I'm an alcoholic. It's me again. I've just emailed. I thought I'd emailed the Zoo Crew email the other day and said I wanted to sponsor, but when I've looked, I didn't actually say that, so I don't know why I've got it in my head. But I have just messaged them now, and I am very much looking for a sponsor.
Perfect. All right, we'll make sure that we get that list to you. And ladies, if you're looking for a sponsee, we've got Steph waiting for you. And Nicole.
Nicole, alcoholic. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify too, when you do request the list, when you request the men's or the women's list, you need to send your name. You need to send your name, your location, and your phone number. And are you a sponsee, a sponsor, or a sober support? You need to identify, you know, what you're looking for and what you're, you know, if you're willing to be, you know, a sponsor or a sober support. And then your name will be added to the list. And the first part of the list is sponsees, looking for a sponsor. And if you scroll down, I know for the women's list, it's very, very long. You have to scroll to the bottom of the list to get to the sponsors and the sober support. So it's really important to look at the whole document, not just the first few lines. Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify that in case anyone was having troubles, but you know, you do have to send the information in order to be added on to it. If you're missing anything, then it's hard for us to identify what you're looking for and what you're willing to do.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? We have time for a couple of questions. Any kind of statements, anything? Oh. Jonathan?
Okay, I guess that answers all of the questions there. So what about being a sponsee? What is expected of a sponsee and how to be a good sponsee? You know, let's go there.
Love it.
What am I willing to do to be a good sponsee? Well, first off, this is the first time that I ever even thought about being a good sponsee this time around. You know, and I think that has everything to do with the group and the sponsorship in which I'm receiving now. But I've made mistakes. You know, I've made mistakes when I first came in. I didn't have a message. I did not have a message. All I had was my mess. And I would come into meetings and share that. And so my sponsor would call me after the meeting and say, John, you know, what you're saying is it's not helping me. It's not helping me. We're going to start working on helping you to get a message together that can help others. So, you know, then I could be a better sponsee. And one thing, I got caught with that one that you mentioned. Yeah, letting my sponsor be the last one to know what's going on. Oh my goodness, boy, did I get my ass burnt for that one. He called me up and he said, you're talking all of this problem, but you never came to me and let me know. Oh, well, I didn't want to bother you and this, that. He said, if you were bothering me, I would have never told you that I would be a sponsor. Make sure you call me first. And then listen to this. I will help you to get a solution so that the next time that you share that you had a problem, you would also be able to share the solution and how you solved that problem and make it make sense. It's okay for you to go in and share your problem, but also learn how to share how you got through it also. So that's something that I had to learn, and being a good sponsee. And let's get on to how to be a good sponsee, Trev. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. All right, Michelle, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi. So I don't know how to be a good sponsee. I just know that staying regular contact is very important, because it kind of when I first, get sober, one of the things that I need the most is a routine. So adding my sponsor to my routine, it really helps me stay sober, you know. Obviously no unnecessary drama. I know I'm a giant mess right now, but I don't, I don't want to, like affect anybody else's sobriety with my drama and arguing. I had a sponsor before the sponsor I have now, and I don't know, there was a lot of unnecessary drama, and it kind of made me go out and start drinking again because I felt like, like, oh my gosh, like everything's falling apart, so it kind of made me drink again on top of all the problems that I already had. So I want to make sure that I'm not causing any unnecessary drama. Like, I know I'm a mess, like, 'cause, that's why I'm here, but I want to make sure that I'm not causing anybody any unnecessary drama. And one thing I just heard that is probably
10 seconds.
me is to let my sponsor be the first person to know that I have a problem, because that problem could take you out, and chances are if you have a sponsor that worked the 12 steps or worked the steps or they're a step ahead of you, they probably have a solution or they've been there already. And another thing I just heard is know when to speak and know when to listen. I just don't want to sit here and just completely unload without getting any kind of solutions back. So I think that's what being is. I think one of the number one things though is to stay in regular contact with your sponsor. Period. I think that's probably one of the most important things in being a good sponsee. That's all I got for now. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Michelle. And for me, I'm willing to go to any length necessary and take every suggestion given to me. All right, next we have Dave. We're going to drop it down to a minute share if that's possible, please. Thank you.
I can make that happen. It's more of a suggestion, possibly, than it is a question anyway. Would it be possible to have a sponsee workshop? When I first took on this new sponsee, the first thing I did was send him the link to the previous sponsorship workshop. Whether he listened to it or not, I don't know. But I think it would be helpful for the sponsor if the sponsee were to attend a workshop with this as the primary topic. That's it. Thanks.
That is a great suggestion. Thank you for that one. Nicole.
Oops. Nicole, alcoholic. Yeah, I'll be really quick, but I totally agree with Dave. It's a great opportunity for us to utilize the podcast and send our potential sponsee to the website and to listen to anything there. Also, too, I think as a sponsee, you want to be vigorously honest. You want to be respectful of time, almost as though, I have to respect that time and the amount of energy and time that my sponsor is putting into my recovery. So that's ultimately that's really important to me. And to do what they say. And so, I always look at it, if they suggest something, basically that means you need to do it. So that's really important to me. You know, and I think of any suggestions, if someone's suggesting something to me and, you know, considering where it's coming from, I'm going to be like, yeah, probably need to do that. And I like what cousins Jonathan shared too. Yeah, don't always bring the problem, bring the solution, right? You know, I've done that. You know, but yeah, it's being, you know, more aware of that now. But working the program, it's you know, you can see that more clearly. So that's all I had to add. Thanks, Jen. Thanks for hosting too.
Thank you, Nicole. And it was an absolute honor to be of service and host. Well, we got about 1 more minute, and then I got to close out the workshop.
Okay, I'm Jonathan and I'm an alcoholic, and I just want to say there is as a sponsee, there is no more gratifying feeling than to take the suggestion that your sponsor gives you and come back and tell them how it worked out. Nothing feels better than that, you know? So yeah, it definitely works if you just give that a try. Thanks.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Well, that concludes our sponsorship workshop. If you guys will be open, if you want a fellowship afterwards, have any more questions that you were a little afraid to ask before. But this podcast will be available on the website, which is thezooCrew.org, in 2 to 3 days. So we're going to have a moment of silence for those still sick and suffering in and outside of the rooms, followed by the Lord's Prayer. And who woke us up this morning? Our Father,
Oh, wow.
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, ever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
Coming back, it works if you work it.
Yeah, great workshop.
You work it.